The observation deck of the Galactic Council's central spire was silent. 47 species stood on the floating rings, their multicolored eyes fixed on the single holographic screen at the center. The image showed a dry red planet orbiting a dying yellow star. On that planet, a lone figure in a cracked white suit was kneeling in the dust. Ambassador Vrel of the Xylanthy, a tall insectoid being with compound eyes that reflected sorrow, clicked his mandibles softly. "The last one," he whispered. His species had watched humanity for 3,000 cycles. They had seen the humans build cities of glass, then steel, then light. They had seen them fight pointless wars, cure every disease, and then turn their eyes to the stars. But humans were fragile. They lived only 80 cycles on average. They burned through their own world's resources faster than any other species in the archive. The other ambassadors murmured. The crab-like Haver, whose species valued stability above all, clacked a pincer. Good riddance. Violent, chaotic, and loud. They once declared war on a comet because it interrupted their satellite network. A few ambassadors made sounds that passed for laughter. The floating jellyfish of the Quithian collective pulsed with a pale light of agreement. The council had watched humanity die not from a great war, but from a slow, sad quiet. A fungal blight had mutated from the last farmlands on Earth. It ate plastic, metal, and organic tissue. Within 20 years, 9 billion became 1 million. Within 50, 1 million became 1. That one was Kalen Arvad. He was 92 years old, the last human born on a dead Earth. He had spent his final 10 years in a bunker on Mars, repairing a single transmitter to send out old human music into the void. Not a plea for help, just a goodbye. Now his oxygen was at 2%. On the screen, Kalen looked up at the gray sky. He did not cry. He just nodded, as if confirming a fact he had always known. Then he fell forward. The dust did not even bounce. He was still. The council chamber erupted in a sigh of relief. Ambassador Vrel turned off the hologram. The human anomaly is closed. Their quadrant will be divided among the High V and the Quithian. All records of their genetic code will be purged from the Galactic Library as per the Purity Accords. The vote was unanimous, 47-0. No one wanted the memory of a species that had once tried to dig a tunnel to the center of its own planet just to see what would happen. But as the ambassadors began to leave, a junior technician named Zila, a small, furry creature from the moon of Thrax, stared at her screen. A single red dot was blinking. It was the biosignature from Kalen Arvad's suit. It had flatlined for 6 seconds. Then it flickered. Zila rubbed her large eyes. The dot was moving. Not a twitch. A full, steady movement. It was climbing out of the dust. She tried to speak, but her voice was a squeak. She rewound the recording. The council had stopped watching too soon. After Kalen fell, his suit had gone dark. But then, something impossible happened. The dust around his body began to swirl. Not by wind. Mars had no wind that day. The dust moved in a perfect spiral, like a galaxy spinning. Then his fingers curled. He pushed himself up. His eyes, visible through the cracked visor, were no longer old and tired. They were bright blue, and they were looking directly at the Council's observation satellite. Zila finally found her voice. "Ambassador Vrel." She shrieked. The insectoid turned, annoyed. The human. "He is not dead. He is standing up." Vrel clicked his mandibles in irritation. "Biomass decay can cause nerve twitches for up to an hour, Zila. Basic biology." He turned back to leave. Zila pulled up the vital stats. Heart rate, 140. Brain activity, higher than any recorded human. And his body temperature was rising. It had been 22 degrees Celsius. Now it was 37. Now 45. The suit began to smoke. On the screen, Kalen removed his helmet. The Martian atmosphere should have boiled his blood and collapsed his lungs. He took a deep breath. Then he smiled. His skin was changing. It was no longer pale and wrinkled. It was smoothing, turning a deep bronze, and faint lines of light like circuitry were glowing under his flesh. He looked at his own hands, turned them over, and laughed. A real echoing laugh that the satellite's audio pickups transmitted clearly. "I told you, Mom," he said to no one. The failsafe was real. The council ambassadors froze. Vrel rushed back to the rail. Zoom in, now. The image magnified. Kalen Arvad, the last human, was not just alive. He was more. The dust on Mars was rising around him, not as a storm, but as a cloak. He raised one hand, and 1,000 tons of red sand lifted into the air, forming a perfect sphere above his head. Then he closed his fist, and the sphere compressed into a single flawless black diamond the size of a fist. He caught it and put it in his pocket. The Hive ambassador backed away. That is impossible. No organic can manipulate matter without technology. Zila's screen flashed a new alert. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures. They're not coming from any device on his body. They're coming from him. It's a type of quantum resonance we've never seen. It's as if every particle in his body just learned a new trick." Kalen started walking. Not toward the old bunker. Toward the equator. Toward the old human research station that had been buried for 100 years. The station where the last human scientists had worked on something called Project Lazarus. The council had dismissed it as desperate fantasy. Now, the fantasy was walking. Vrel slammed his pincer on the rail. "Recall the purge order. Do not delete the human files. And get me everything on this Lazarus project, now." He stared at the walking man on the screen. For the first time in his species' long memory, Ambassador Vrel felt something he had never felt before. Not fear. It was worse. It was curiosity. 3 hours after his resurrection, Kalen Arvad stood before the sealed blast doors of the Lazarus station. The red dust of Mars had already been wiped clean from his boots by the internal gravity field he now unconsciously emitted. He did not understand the physics of what was happening to him, but he understood the purpose. His grandmother had told him the secret on her deathbed, whispering it like a prayer. "We didn't fail, Kalen. We evolved." But evolution takes a funeral. The Galactic Council watched through a dozen satellites, their feeds now encrypted and shared only among the highest security levels. Ambassador Vrel had not left the observation deck. He had not eaten. He had not clicked his mandibles once. He just watched. The Hive ambassador had stopped laughing. The Quithian jellyfish had dimmed to a worried gray. On screen, Kalen placed his palm on the door's scanner. The system was dead, its power cells drained a century ago. But the moment his skin touched the cold metal, the lights inside the station flickered. Then they blazed to life. The door groaned and split open. Kalen walked inside. The cameras in the station, ancient but preserved in the vacuum, flickered on. The council now had a view of the interior. It was a mausoleum of genius. Rows of computers, their screens cracked, but their processors now humming. Jars of preserved organs floating in cloudy liquid. And at the center, a single chair made of black obsidian with metal needles pointing inward. A torture device? No, a delivery system. Kalen sat down. The needles did not pierce him. They glowed. The light under his skin pulsed brighter. Zila, the junior technician, was now the most valuable creature in the galaxy. She had hacked into the station's data core and was translating the human files. "Ambassador," she said, her voice trembling. "Project Lazarus. It was not a cure for death. It was a weapon. The humans knew they were dying. They spent their last 100 years not fighting the blight, but engineering a solution for the next stage. Vrel leaned close. Explain. Zila pulled up a schematic. It showed a human cell, but inside the nucleus was a second structure, a tiny spiral like a coiled snake. They created a dormant virus. Not a killing virus. A rewriting virus. They released it into the atmosphere of Earth, 50 years before the blight. Every human was infected, but the virus did nothing. It just waited. It was programmed to activate only upon the death of the final living human. The trigger was the absence of a specific neural signature, the collective human consciousness. The Hiver ambassador stomped a claw. That is nonsense. Consciousness cannot be measured. Zila pointed at the screen. The humans measured it. They called it the soul frequency. When the last human heart stopped, the virus received the signal. It began rewriting every cell in the body of the last human. Not to heal him, to upgrade him. He is not Kalen Arvad anymore. He is the Lazarus. A single human designed to carry the entire genetic and technological memory of their species. And his body? It is no longer biological. Vrel watched Kalen sit in the chair. The needles were now floating, not touching him. His eyes were closed. His mouth was moving. He was talking to someone. The audio feed crackled. Yes, grandmother. I see it now. The fire, the wheel, the jump. I remember everything. Every birth, every death, every mistake. I am the archive. He opened his eyes. They were not blue anymore. They were gold, and they seemed to look through the camera, through the satellite, through the light years of space, and directly into the council chamber. I know you are watching, he said. His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that made the metal of the observation deck vibrate. Do not be afraid. I am not a god. I am just a student who finally finished the homework. He stood up. The chair shattered. The needles melted into a puddle of silver liquid that flowed up his legs and formed a suit around him. Not the old white suit, but a sleek, dark gray armor that seemed to drink the light. On his chest, a single symbol appeared. A circle with a dot in the center. The human symbol for the sun. Or for a target. The council erupted. Some ambassadors demanded immediate military action. Others begged for diplomacy. A few simply fled the chamber. Vrel raised a pincer for silence. It took 5 minutes. We will not attack, he said. We do not know what he is capable of. Zila, what else is in the files? Zila scrolled faster. Her fur stood on end. Sir, the humans did not just upgrade one body. The virus was designed to spread. If the Lazarus touches another species, that species' genetic code will be adjusted. Not killed, adjusted. They will gain a fraction of human traits, curiosity, ambition, the need to build and break and build again. It is not a weapon. It is a gift. But to the council, it is a nightmare. The Quithian collective pulsed bright red. He cannot be allowed to leave Mars. The stability of the galaxy depends on predictable species. Humans were chaos incarnate. One human with their full history and power? He will unravel everything. Vrel turned to the military commander, a massive reptilian from the Drax system. Send a containment fleet. Do not engage. Just surround the planet. I want to talk to him. But Kalen was already moving. He walked out of the station, raised his hand to the sky, and the red dust of Mars rose again. Not into a sphere this time. Into a staircase. A spiral staircase of compressed sand, crystal, and iron, rising mile after mile into the thin atmosphere. He began to climb. The council watched in horror. He was not trying to escape. He was trying to get a better view. Halfway up, he stopped and looked back at the planet. "Poor Mars," he said softly. "You were never meant to be a grave. You were meant to be a nursery." He snapped his fingers. The entire planet shuddered. Deep beneath the surface, the frozen water cores that humanity had discovered but never reached began to melt. Not slowly, but in a rush. Oceans formed in minutes. The temperature rose. The red dust turned brown, then green, moss, then grass, then trees, sprouting from seeds that had been dormant in the Lazarus station for a century. The Galactic Council watched a planet terraform itself in less than an hour. And standing on a staircase of diamond, a single human watched it with them. He waved at the satellite. "Now," he said, "let's talk about your purity accords, because I have a few notes." The Galactic Council's containment fleet arrived at Mars in 18 hours. 47 warships, each the size of a city, surrounded the newly green planet. Their weapons were charged. Their shields were at maximum. Their commanders had been given one order: do not fire unless the human leaves the atmosphere. But the human did not leave. He waited. Kalen Arvad sat on a bench he had built from compressed Martian rock, overlooking a vast blue ocean. The air was breathable now. The temperature was a pleasant 20 degrees. Actual birds, resurrected from DNA, samples in the station sang in the new trees. He was eating an apple. Where the apple came from, no one knew. He had simply grown it from a seed in his palm in 30 seconds. Ambassador Vrel, the Hydra commander, and the Quithian representative had boarded a shuttle and landed a respectful distance away. They walked toward him, their environmental suits humming. Vrel had insisted on coming alone, but the military had overruled him. Now, the three of them stood 10 meters from the human, unsure of protocol. Kalen finished his apple and tossed the core into the grass. A small tree sprouted instantly. "Welcome to New Earth," he said. "I know that name is arrogant, but you named your planets things like Hyver Prime and Quithian Home, so let's not throw stones." He smiled. It was a friendly smile, but his golden eyes missed nothing. Vrel stepped forward. "Kalen Arvad, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I demand you explain your actions. You have violated the Non-Interference Pact. You have weaponized a dead planet. And you have threatened the genetic purity of every species in the galaxy." Kalen tilted his head. "Threatened? I offered a gift. Your species, Ambassador Vrel, has been stagnant for 2 million years. You evolved once, perfected your form, and then stopped. You don't dream. You don't wonder. You just maintain. That is not life. That is a very long death." The Hydra commander clacked his claws. "We are stable. We are peaceful. We do not burn our own worlds or slaughter each other over skin color or imaginary gods." Kalen nodded. "Fair point. We did all that. It was terrible. And we learned from it. That's the difference between us. You avoid pain. We walked through it and came out the other side with empathy. You see chaos. I see flexibility. You see violence. I see passion. You see a flawed species. I see a species that tried everything so the next one wouldn't have to." He stood up. The 3 ambassadors stepped back. He did not move toward them. He simply raised his arms. Behind him, the ocean split. Not a dramatic biblical crack, but a gentle parting, revealing a path of dry land leading to a structure at the bottom. A human city, intact, glowing with blue light. The council's scans had missed it because it was made of a material that absorbed all signals. "Living stone. What is that?" whispered the Quithian representative. Kalen walked toward the path. "That is the real Lazarus. Not me. The city holds the sum total of human knowledge. Every book, every song, every scientific paper, every terrible joke. And it holds the key to the one thing your council has banned for 10,000 years, directed evolution. He stopped at the edge of the path. The purity accords were written by the first species to achieve spaceflight. They were afraid. They saw that young species always made mistakes. So they made a rule. No species shall alter itself or others. Stay as you are. Stay safe. Stay small. But that law has a flaw. It assumes that the first way is the best way. It is not. It is just the first. Vrel's mandibles trembled. You want to break the accords. I want to rewrite them, Kalen said. Not with force, with proof. I am going to spend the next year on Mars. I am going to build. I am going to teach the trees to sing. I am going to make the rivers flow uphill if I feel like it. And I am going to broadcast everything, every second, to every planet in the galaxy. And then I will ask a simple question. Do you want to stay the same forever? Or do you want to become more? The Hydra commander raised his weapon. You are a destabilizing element. I am authorized to kill you. Kalen looked at the weapon. He did not flinch. You can try. But remember, Commander, I am not one human. I am 9 billion. Every ancestor I ever had is inside my head. Every soldier, every scientist, every mother, every fool. You are not pointing a gun at a man. You are pointing a gun at a species that once built a cannon to shoot a dead dog into space because they loved him. Do you really think you can scare me? The commander lowered his weapon. Not from mercy, from confusion. He had no category for this. Vrel stepped forward and did something no Xylanthy had done in recorded history. He bowed his head. Teach us, he said. Not the chaos, the courage. We have been frozen for too long. Show us how to move again. Kalen's golden eyes softened. He placed a hand on Vrel's armored shoulder. The touch was light. But every Xylanthy on the whole world, 200 light-years away, suddenly felt a strange sensation. Not pain, not fear, curiosity, a burning, uncomfortable, wonderful need to know what was over the next hill. The council watched in panic as their own people began to ask questions for the first time in millennia. The human had not fired a single shot, and he had already won. 1 year later, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. The chamber was not silent this time. It was loud. 47 species were arguing, shouting, and for the first time, laughing. The old order was crumbling. The purity accords had been repealed by a vote of 30 to 17. The 17 dissenters were already facing rebellions on their homeworlds, not violent rebellions, but polite, persistent demands for change. Young Quithian jellyfish were leaving the collective to explore space alone. Young Hydra were painting their shells with bright colors. Chaos, beautiful, terrifying chaos. And at the center of the storm sat Kalen Arvad. He was not on Mars anymore. He was in the council chamber, sitting in a chair that had been built for a species twice his size. He looked comfortable. His golden eyes were calm. His dark gray armor had changed. It was now patterned with the symbols of every species in the galaxy, woven together into a single tapestry. He had not asked for that. The species had offered it. Ambassador Vrel, now the unofficial leader of the Reform faction, stood at the podium. We have received the final report from the Lazarus Project, he said. The human Kalen Arvad has provided us with a gift. Not weapons, not technology. A map of human history. Every mistake, every war, every broken heart, every small kindness. He says we must read it not to repeat it, but to understand that failure is not the end. It is the first draft. The Hiver ambassador, the same one who had laughed at humanity's death, stood up. His voice was softer now. I voted against this. I was wrong. The humans showed me that stability without growth is just a slower form of extinction. I apologize to the ghost of humanity. He looked at Kalen, and to its present. Kalen stood up. The chamber fell silent. He walked to the center of the floating rings and looked up at the holographic dome above, which now showed not a map of the galaxy, but a single image, Earth, the old Earth, blue and green and alive again. He had rebuilt it in 6 months. Not with force, with patience. The fungal blight had been neutralized by a simple retrovirus he designed in an afternoon. The cities were still ruins. He had left them that way. Ruins are good, he had said. They remind you to be careful. He began to speak. His voice was quiet, but it filled every corner of the chamber. A year ago, you watched me die. You were relieved. You thought chaos had ended. But chaos never ends. It just changes shape. The question is not how to stop it. The question is how to dance with it. He raised his hand. A small sphere of light appeared above his palm. Inside the sphere was a tiny spinning galaxy. This is what you saw when I rose from the dust. You thought it was power. It was not. It was memory. Every human who ever lived gave me a piece of themselves. The stubbornness of the first fish that crawled onto land. The hope of the first child who drew a picture on a cave wall. The rage of the first soldier who realized war was stupid. The love of the first mother who held her child and promised them a better world. The sphere grew brighter. I am not a god. I am a librarian. And I have come to give you a library card. He opened his hand. The sphere exploded into 1,000 tiny lights that flew out of the chamber, through the hall, and into space. Each light was a seed of human memory, designed to plant itself in the mind of any being that chose to receive it. Not to change them, to inspire them. The ambassadors watched the lights fly. Some reached out to touch them. When they did, they gasped. A young Xylanthie technician saw a human mother teaching her child to ride a bicycle. The child fell. The mother laughed and helped him up. The technician started crying. He had never seen failure treated with kindness. An old Hiver general saw a human soldier sharing his last chocolate bar with an enemy. The general sat down heavily. He had fought 17 wars. He had never shared anything. The Quithian collective received a single image. A human standing on the moon, looking back at Earth. The jellyfish pulsed in unison. They had never looked back. They had only looked forward. Now they understood longing. Kalen returned to his chair. He looked tired but happy. I am going to sleep now, he said. Not die. Sleep for 1,000 years. When I wake up, I hope to find a galaxy that has learned to fall down and get back up again. A galaxy that is not afraid to be ridiculous. A galaxy that makes mistakes and admits them. A galaxy that is alive. He closed his eyes. His golden light faded. His armor turned gray and simple. He became, for all appearances, an old man in a chair. But his heart beat. And his mind dreamed. And somewhere, in the dust of a dead world, a single flower bloomed. Ambassador Vrel walked to the center of the chamber. He looked at the sleeping human. He looked at the ambassadors, many of whom were still crying, or laughing, or simply staring in wonder. He clicked his mandibles one last time, not in sorrow, but in acceptance. The council will now hear a new proposal, he said. I call it the Humanity Accords. Article 1. There is no such thing as a perfect species. Article 2. That is not a weakness. It is the only reason to wake up tomorrow. Article 3. The last human is not our enemy. He is our child, and we have a lot to learn. The vote was not unanimous. But for the first time in galactic history, the dissenters did not leave in anger. They stayed. They asked questions. They listened. And somewhere, in the deep silence between stars, the ghost of a species that had died screaming began to sing a lullaby. It was out of tune. It was perfect.